from the broadcast studio, hitting in the static. This ain't no bedtime story, son, it's prophetic. Encrypted signals from the shadows of the garden. We dig where the dirt got secrets, no parting. Microphone alchemist, scriptures with a twist. Peep the frequency, seeds in the mist. We drop bars like plagues, revelations in the cadence. Broadcasting truth while they trapped in surveillance. Wisdom with a watchman's blade. Fourth watch style while your whole system fade. Blood moons, Nephilim, echoes in the pine. Sasquatch stomping through the fault lines of time. We ain't mainstream, we ancient stream. Cypher with the prophets, decode the dream. So if you tuned in, better guard your mind. It's broadcasting seeds and we breaking the design.
You ever catch something move in the corner of your eye, snap your head toward it, and there's nothing there? Not a curtain, no, not a pet, not a car outside. Just that heavy feeling that something was standing there watching you until you looked directly at it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Broadcasting Seeds. I am your host, Bennett Tanton, and tonight we are going to talk about the thing most people laugh off to stay sane. Shadow people. Not as a cheap horror trope, not as a sleep paralysis meme. We're going to treat them like a serious data point in a very broken reality. Because here's the question that has people gnawing, it's been gnawing at me. What if shadow people are not ghosts in the classical sense? What if they're not demons in the movie sense? What if what people keep seeing in the corner of their vision is actually a glitch in how the human brain renders reality? Think about it. Your eyes do not feed your brain a live stream. The brain takes fragmented light, electrical noise, and delayed input, and then builds a believable world on top of it. It fills in the blind spots. It edits out details it thinks are unimportant. It delays what you see so your consciousness can stitch it all together into a smooth video. Which means you and I are always a little bit behind what is really happening. Now, imagine something that is not behind, something that moves faster than that delay, something that just lives just a fraction of a second outside the neat little timeline that your brain irons out. Okay? Maybe that is why you only catch them in the periphery. Maybe that is why the moment you lock on with full conscious attention, they just vanish. Not because they disappeared, but because your brain just overwrote them with something safer for your protection. Or so we are told. Here's the part that adds even more weight. People have described these things across cultures and across centuries. Featureless silhouettes at the foot of the bed, a tall man with a hat standing in a doorway at 3 a.m., thin, ink black figures watching from the hallway, from the closet, from the edge of the road at night. The reports spike with sleep paralysis, high stress, occult experimentation, weird electromagnetic environments, and during times when people feel like they are under spiritual attack. This is an odd pattern for something we are supposed to dismiss as a trick of the eyes. So in this episode, we're going to pull on that thread a little. Not to scare you for fun, but to ask some hard questions about what it means if even 5% of those encounters are exactly what they feel like, not dreams, not hallucinations, and not your imagination, but encounters with something that should not be visible in our world at all. Here is how we are going to break this down tonight. In section 1, we will dig into the vision matrix itself, how your brain really constructs reality and where the natural blind spots and glitches live. We're not going to textbook on this. We are going to stay in normal language and talk about what it means for that feeling that you are not alone in the room. In section 2, we will walk through real world reports of shadow people and their cousins from different cultures. The Hat Man, Jinn, described as living shadows, night watchers, bedroom sentinels, hallway figures. We will look at patterns, common details, and what start to emerge when you line them up side by side. In section 3, we will go into the deep end, spiritual warfare, altered states, military and high strangeness locations, and possibly what we call shadow entities are not the glitch at all. Maybe we are the glitch. Maybe we are the ones wandering through a space that belongs to something else. And every now and then the system misfires and we see each other. As always, the point of broadcasting seas is not to tell you what to think. It is to hand you the shovel and say, here is where to start digging. If this kind of conversation lights you up, helps you feel less crazy about the weird things you have experienced, or just gives you a fresh angle on the unseen, please take a second and like, share, and review the podcast. This is how the show grows, how more people find it, and how we keep building a community of people who are not afraid of the questions everyone else avoids. All right, get comfortable, dim the lights. If you want to make this extra weird, and maybe pay attention to that corner of the room you usually ignore. Section 1, the vision matrix, living one frame behind. All right, let's peel back the curtain on the very thing we trust most, our eyes. We like to think that seeing is believing. We tell kids that if they didn't see it with their own eyes, it didn't happen. But the truth is, your eyes are not giving you reality. They're giving you a rendering interpretation that your brain thinks you can handle. Science tells us that visual information hits the retina, travels the optic nerve, gets processed in multiple layers of the brain, and eventually forms what we call a picture. But here's the kicker. Your brain is always about 100 milliseconds behind the real world. That's 1/10 of a second. Not long. Enough to notice when life is calm, but long enough to completely miss something fast, subtle, or not meant for you. Now, that delay creates a small but powerful problem. You are navigating a world that your brain already edited by the time you see it. Your consciousness is like the world's worst football announcer calling the play after the touchdown already happened. So what does the brain do to keep us safe and sane? Frankly, it lies. It fills in gaps, literally hallucinating part of your visual field, so you don't see the horror of a giant blind spot where your optic nerve meets your retina. It smooths motion, so reality doesn't jitter like a bad security camera feed. It deletes anything it deems irrelevant to survival. A shadow flicker in your peripheral vision. Not helpful, so it's gone. A shape darker than darkness itself that shouldn't exist. Probably ignored unless you're vulnerable or your defenses are down. Because the brain's number one job is to show you the truth. It's to keep the truth from overwhelming you. Because the brain's number one job is not to show you the truth, it's to keep the truth from overwhelming you. There's also the concept of binocular rivalry. When each eye sees something different, the brain doesn't show both. It picks one and censors the other. Think about that. Your brain literally chooses what version of reality you get. And then there's predictive coding. The brain constantly tries to guess what's coming next. It's sometimes, if something appears that doesn't match the prediction, like a human-shaped void, the brain panics and scrambles to force it into a category. That's where things go wrong. You might glimpse a figure standing in the doorway, no face, no texture, no detail, and your brain can't categorize it as a person or an animal or a lamp. It doesn't match any stored template. So instead of showing you the anomaly, the brain attempts to erase or rewrite it. Too slow. You already saw it. And that's when you snap your head and nothing's there. Some researchers say all of this is proof that beings don't exist. It says it's proof something is there, and the brain is desperately trying to protect the illusion of a clean and normal world. Something that moves before the brain can edit. Something that exists in the margin between frames. Something the rendering engine wasn't designed to display. Okay, now, if that all sounds like sci-fi, stick around. Because the next segment, we're going to lay the science down next to centuries of eyewitness accounts. And you'll see that people separated by oceans and belief systems are describing the same thing. A presence that watches, that stands, that observes just outside the spotlight of human perception. And if the whole world is seeing the same figure in the same shadows, maybe the shadows aren't empty after all. Section 2, the Global Shadow Watchers. Where science leaves gaps, stories fill them. And the wild thing is, the stories match. Every continent, every era, every belief system. People see the same things. Dark silhouettes, shaped like humans, but missing every human detail, with no eyes, no mouth, no clothes, just a void standing where matter should be. Let's start with the most infamous one, the Hat Man. A tall, broad-shouldered figure wearing what looks like a trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat. People report feeling paralyzed, this crushing sense of dread, the Hat Man leaning in close like he's inspecting them. This isn't a handful of cases, thousands of reports from the U.S. to the Philippines, all describing nearly identical encounters. A nonprofit called the Hat Man Project has cataloged many of them, and that's at thehatmanproject.com. I'll put that in the show notes. Why would hallucinations all wear the same hat? Then we move on to the jinn. In the Middle East, the Quran speaks of beings made from smokeless fire, creatures that can shift between worlds and remain unseen unless they choose to reveal themselves. Many modern encounters describe the jinn not as fiery beings, but shadowy forms. Locals will tell you these entities aren't passive. They observe, they test, and they even attack. The night marchers and watchers. Indigenous cultures worldwide talk about shadow guardians. The Choctaw talked about a tall shadow that stalks those with fear. The Hawaiian night marchers, dark warriors seen in formation. The Cree shadow people, spirits who hover near the sick or spiritually wounded. These stories existed long before science gave us excuses like sleep paralysis, something of which bedroom invaders. Millions of people across the globe, especially during sleep paralysis, report seeing a shadow at the foot of the bed, a figure stepping onto their chest, something whispering just outside comprehension. And sleep paralysis is a real neurological event, yes. But does that automatically make everything seen during it imaginary? Or is the paralysis the vulnerable moment when the filter drops and you finally see what's been standing there the whole time? Stanford research confirms sleep paralysis sufferers often report a felt presence in the room. Where does a felt presence come from if nothing is there? The pattern emerges. Put all these accounts side by side and you get a consistent picture. They watch. They prefer the edges of vision. They vanish when directly confronted. They appear more during stress, trauma, sleep issues, or spiritual warfare. It's almost like they need your mind distracted so they can slip through unnoticed. People describe them like predators studying prey, researchers studying subjects. Because here's a detail rarely talked about publicly. A huge number of shadow people sightings happen near military bases, UFO hotspots, sites with high EMF exposure, hospitals, prisons, battlegrounds, areas with deep occult history. That's not random noise. That's a map. And if these things go where fear, death, and secrets gather, then what exactly are they feeding on? Or protecting? Or preparing for? Section 3. Glitch in the veil. Who is watching the watchers? All right, deep breath. Because of the first two segments were us circling the perimeter, this is where we step inside the house. There's a theory in neuroscience that our brain acts like a security filter, blocking information from your conscious mind. They say it can't handle without breaking. That includes entities outside the visible spectrum, dimensions not aligned with our sensory range, energies or beings moving faster than our perception lag. Research in infrasound frequencies below human hearing show that it can induce fear, dread, and the sensation of a presence. Electromagnetic exposure near military testing ranges have caused people to report shadow figures and watchers long before TikTok made it trendy. Scientists say it's hallucination, but What if those environments simply peel back the filter? What if the glitch isn't happening to them? What if the glitch is happening to us? The fourth watch theory. Between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., what scripture calls the fourth watch, activities ramp up. Paranoia, night terrors, dark encounters, shadow figures inching closer. Jesus walked on water in the fourth watch. Demons recognized him in the dark long before the disciples did. Demons recognized him in the dark long before the disciples did. Not metaphorically, historically. When spiritual warfare spikes, so do the shadows. The observer effect. Quantum physics tells us the act of observation changes reality. So what happens when they observe us? Many witnesses describe the same reaction. The moment I noticed it, it noticed me noticing it. That's not a hallucination. That's an interaction. Predators watch. Scientists watch. Wardens watch. So which one are we dealing with? Whistleblowers and battlefield sightings. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Soldiers deployed in conflict zones, Afghanistan, Iraq, even stateside training, have come forward saying they saw black silhouettes moving between tents, shadow figures pacing the perimeter, entities standing motionless on ridge lines at dusk. Classified incidents logs refer to them as dark watchers, perimeter anomalies, non-human silhouettes. These are hardened warriors, not jumpy tourists. Shadow sightings increase in places where death lingers: hospitals, war zones, old ritual grounds, suicide locations, like they're attracted to something. Energy, suffering, souls, data about us. Frankly, we don't know, but they're not random. Here's the hypothesis. Shadow people aren't ghosts that show up after someone dies. They show up before someone breaks. They appear when your fear cracks a doorway. Your brain's filter fails. The veil thins under pressure, not to comfort, not to warn, to observe the moment a human soul reaches its most vulnerable state, like they're running tests on the system. Which raises the final question. Are we the dominant species, or are we just the most confident one? Because while we're mapped perfectly to this physical plane, shadow people seem mapped to the next layer down, just out of sight. The glitch isn't the darkness. The glitch is the brief moment when our eyes reveal what the darkness is hiding. And maybe those moments are increasing. Outro. When the shadows notice you back. So here we are. Took a hard look at our own biology and learned we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as our brain allows. We followed the trail of eyewitness accounts across centuries and found the same beings staring back at us from every culture. And we stared into the possibility that these things aren't glitches at all. That maybe we are. Maybe humans are the anomaly wandering through a system built for something older, something hidden, something comfortable in the darkness. And maybe those shadow forms that flicker just out of sight aren't strangers. Maybe they've been here the whole time, watching, studying, waiting for the moment we finally see them. So tonight, When you turn off the lights, when the house settles, when your eyes start to relax into the darkness, and you get that sudden electric feeling that you are not alone, maybe you don't brush it off. Maybe don't rationalize it away. Maybe the darkness isn't empty. Maybe it's crowded. And the real fear isn't that something is standing there. It's that it has always been standing there. And you finally caught it in mid-frame. If this episode gave you something to think about, if it made you feel a little less crazy about the weird moments you've experienced, please take a quick second to like, share, and follow, and leave a review for Broadcasting Seeds. That's how this community grows. That's how we reach more people who are waking up to the unseen side of our world. Thank you for being here with me in the dark. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and pay attention to the shadows. They might be paying attention to you.
Before you even know you're there, like the dark is thinking about you while you sleep. I blink and the room bends, corners rearranged, eyes lie blinded is what it can explain. Silhouettes sinking with the flicker of breath, stepping through the threshold of sight and death. Can't name it. The void that stands still like a hunger that waits for the moment you chill. Shadows stretch long when you look away. They move with intention, they study their prey. Are they ghosts? Are we the glitch? Are we real, or just a twitch? One frame behind, they live in the delay, watching from the dark like predators at play. One frame behind, they slip through the scenes, checking every fear you buried in your dreams. Brain's a bad translator, missing what is real. Fear's a better instrument, sharpened like steel. Stuck in the blind spot, faceless but aware. They're already in the room, already there. Sink into the flicker of a nervous breath. Every heartbeat loud, attempting death. They're leaning close when defenses drown. You sense them rising when you're lying down. If we see them, do they see us more? If we wake up, what's behind the door? One frame behind, they live in the delay, watching from the dark like predators at play. One frame behind, a glitch in the brain, shadow in the corner, whispering your name. Not hallucination, not imagination, perception, corruption, your vision, malfunction. What enters the moment the filter breaks, what lives in the fear consciousness makes.